talking about injury, work, and moods and how they interact. So the injury you see here is a ACL, which is a common injury, anterior cruciate ligament. That's what happened to God, what's the running back for the Giants, Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley.
Such a shame. Out for the year. He's a puss. Okay. Men at work. So work is very, very important for everybody, but especially in our culture for men. It gives us meaning, purpose. It fulfills the role that we feel we have to have and gives us camaraderie. So work is a very important aspect of our lives, everybody's life, but especially for men. And that studies show that as well. So this is injuries by body part for police officers. This is specific for police officers. So if you start at the 44.2, that's shoulder. And then the next one is waist, which I'm assuming is also lower back. And then neck is next, legs and foot, hands, wrist. Now elbow is the least on this list. So it's just sort of interesting. It's probably telling you guys something you already know, but this is where injuries happen. I think this was actually an international study, so this is true for cops all over the world. This is from US data from about police officers and loss of work. So this is per 100,000, per 10,000 per year, how much they losing in injury-related days away from work. So if you compare police officers with basically every other profession lumped together, police officers have much, much more injuries. I mean, this is another the sky is blue kind of research, but it's interesting to see it so starkly. This one I thought was interesting. So we'll take just a minute to explain, but this is done on relative risk. So it's really just percentage, but it's relative risk is actually not a percentage. So it's times. So you have a 1.64 times chance of having a heart attack than testifying in court than when you're sort of off duty. And that's pretty high, 69 times the risk when you're restraining somebody is, that's a big risk. So the way to mitigate that risk, other than not doing your job, is staying healthy, staying safe and retiring at a reasonable time. So don't have a heart attack. That's probably the leading killer for police officers. It's the #1 killer for police officers if you include their off-duty time. So police officers are most likely to die by a heart attack while they're police officers. But heart attacks often happen in the morning before you go to work. So I'm not happy now. Men work in their managers. So this is also from another article written by some scholars. So they talked about how work is considered like a noble battle, that management sort of emphasizes qualities of struggle, battle, ruthlessness, brutality, a rebellious nature, and aggressive, rugged individualism, which seems to resonate with police work and the way police are managed. Management is defined in terms of the ability to control people, events, companies, environments, and new technologies. So men work and management, they kind of blend in, and then the management becomes a pretty brutal style, which is not great. So unemployment, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the band UB40. They were popular back in the 80s. Red Wine, anybody? No? But their band was named after the unemployment form in England, the UB40 form. So these are also scientifically proven things, that unemployment leads to higher rates of suicide, depression, substance use, especially in men. It's just, it has such an important role in people's lives that when you take it away, especially suddenly, it can be very damaging. Hope in work. So when work is taken away, hopelessness can come with the loss of work. And this is true not just for Americans, but for everybody around the world, that loss of work is often connected to hopelessness. And then all the things that go along with that, like not being involved in your marriage or religious participation or civic duty. It just kind of steamrolls your life. Um, so this is just from the same article, and I'll just read it. Um, one's this is a different article. One's change in social standing was a key factor in loss of hope, as image and self-esteem are tied to people's work ethic, and being unemployed carries considerable stigma, which is another thing. We talk about mental illness and stigma all the time, but being unemployed also has a stigma. Like, why are you working? What's wrong with you? What's going on? You know, and that can be very damaging to the person who's actively looking for work, or not, for that matter. It's a peculiar mitigation of unemployment depression. So the risk of depression from unemployment is higher than just normal life. But if everybody in your social circle is also unemployed, the negative effect on your mood is lower. So in towns where sort of everybody's unemployed, the depression rates are not as high as if you're the one unemployed person in your neighborhood collecting unemployment. Unfortunately, we can presume the opposite. If everybody, all your friends and colleagues are still working, and everybody in your neighborhood is still working and you're not, that could have a more negative effect, because now you've really been singled out and taken away from the thing and people you presumably love and get meaning from. Another interesting factor is that injuries at work are more likely to happen to people who are depressed. And so after you're injured from a work-related thing, you're more likely to be depressed. So it's sort of a vicious cycle of cause and effect. And this will be the last slide. Stoicism is just a philosophy, an ancient philosophy about kind of accepting things as they are and making the best of what you have. And they have a lot of different techniques that one can use. One of them is sort of for everybody who's employed now to imagine life without work, and not in that sort of Shangri-La, like I'm going to win the lottery and I'm going to sit on a beach, or I'm going to retire and everything's going to be wonderful. To think about, what would it be like to lose your job tomorrow? What would it be like to no longer be a police officer? You don't have to sit and dwell on it, but if you do that every now and then and give it a little bit of thought, I'm talking about a few minutes, just enough to feel it and deal with it, you can sort of rehearse and have a better acceptance for when it happens, because it's inevitable. Work is going to end, life is going to end, everything's going to end at some point. And to pretend that it won't doesn't help. So these kind of rehearsals can be helpful. And also when you rehearse, like, gosh, you know, if I'm a doctor and I lost my medical license all of a sudden, would that be the end of me? And you know, I have to spend a little time every now and then thinking about that and say, no, you know, life would go on and I'd be okay. And it can sort of diminish the inevitable below. That's it. That's all I got, unless people have questions.
Does anyone have questions for Nils?
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
This is Melissa Schultz with APD. Do you think that is helping right now during COVID, that if a lot of people are unemployed at this time, that it may not have as negative of a mental impact, because it's sort of doesn't seem like a personal thing that I personally am unemployed? It's like,
no, I do. I think what the studies are showing so far, that I know of with COVID, is that at first, you know, people kind of gathered, you know, rallied around and we're all in it together. And then as it drags on, then the problems really start to mount, especially with the unemployment. And it's so hard to tease out the loss of work from being trapped at home with people that you might have a difficult relationship with. And there's so many things that are going along with it. So to tease out just work would be very, very hard. But I do think it mitigates it, knowing that it's not just me getting fired at work because I'm incompetent, or I, whatever. It's people just aren't going to restaurants anymore. People aren't doing this. So I do think it mitigates it somewhat, but it still sucks.
Yes, agreed.
And that's not to say that even though it's still bad, I mean, it's not like everybody in my neighborhood's unemployed, so it's not as bad, but it's still bad. So now you have the whole country, the whole level of happiness has actually dropped, and they study this. It's dropped, I don't know, like 10%. I forget the exact amount, but it's significant, which is a lot across an entire population.
Thank you.
Are you saying something, Jeff?
Yes, sorry, man, I haven't done that in a long time. But Kirsten asked, how do officers prepare for retirement? Maybe so it doesn't seem so abrupt.
You mean emotionally prepare? I think that there are two ways to prepare. One is to prepare all the sort of logistical things, the financial, when you want to retire, what you're going to do, and think about it realistically. I think that's the biggest thing. People either idealize it or ignore it. Like, oh yes, that's something that's going to happen in the distant future. I think it's best to think about it in a rational manner, and then to prepare both financially but also emotionally. What am I going to do? What are going to be the good things about it? What are going to be the bad things about it? Sort of let your mind go down that path and think it through and talk to people about it.
Awesome. If anyone else has any questions for Nils, you guys can always put it in the chat, or you can email him, or you can ask at the end.